And so I'm going to give you then an introduction now to our next speakers of the day, which is Simon and Neal. So Just have a kind of a dual relationship with us. They are one of our sponsors here today, along with Randstad Digital and also BT, obviously our hosts. But Just have been working with us because they have a belief that they are all about improving a better later life for everybody through their financial products. And when we first started working with them a couple of years ago, their Chief People Officer, Ellie, said, how can we be producing a better later life for our customers and then not delivering a better later life for our employees? A little bit what you've heard from Maurice, this mirroring that our workforces should be a mirror of the consumers that we are serving in our organisations or the B2B corporates. So I'm going to be inviting Neal and Simon to the stage, and they're going to be sharing with you what they've been doing at Just across the age strategy. Simon leads the talent, leadership, learning functions, and then Neal is one of the subject matter experts, the specialists in learning. But they've also been through the Me Redefined journey themselves, and Neal particularly can share what that's meant for him as a user for some light bulb moments. So please give a warm welcome to Simon and Neal from Just. Thank you. I'll leave you the remote.
Thank you, Lindsay. Morning, everyone. I'm going to have my water here, choreographing this. We're standing a long way apart. We do get along well. We just decided to have half the stage each. I've got my glasses here, so I'm going to stand here so I can see my notes, and I might wander around a bit. But if I've got these glasses on, it means I might fall over. So I'll try to manage this. So firstly, just a little bit about Just Group. So we are a FTSE 250 financial services firm specialising in retirement solutions. So our customers tend to be individuals who are at or near retirement, or they might be financial intermediaries, could be corporations, or could be pension trustees. So that's sort of what we do. And we also have a really clear purpose, which I think aligns really nicely with today, which is our purpose, our why, is we help people achieve a better later life. So that's what our products and solutions are all about. So as a business, we've got a really ambitious growth strategy. And Neal and I are focused on ensuring that we have the talent and the capabilities that underpin and enable that growth strategy. So we're operating in really fast-growing markets, rapidly changing markets, and markets where the ability to hire, to retain engaged talent is how you win. Right? It's a really key factor in terms of how we win as a business. So what we're going to cover in this session, so I'm going to do the first two bits, which is a bit about why did we focus on an age inclusion strategy, and then I'm going to talk about where we started and what we learnt, and then Neal is going to spotlight some of the key initiatives, actually including Me Redefined, that we focused on. So that's the plan. So if I should be moving the slides on, shouldn't I? There we go. If I talk about sort of where we started, why have we prioritised this? I mentioned that our growth strategy relies on us being able to attract and retain talent, particularly in roles where we see skill shortages, so finance, actuarial, tech talent. There is a real kind of shortage demand for talent. And there is a big challenge in the financial services industry more generally. So Financial Services Skills Commission, some of you might be familiar with that organisation, they reported recently that 73% of roles within the industry are highly skilled, and that compares to 51% if you look at other industries. They also reported, really significantly, that 260,000 highly skilled workers are going to leave the industry by 2035. So reflecting on that, there's probably an irony there that within the industry, we're really good at pricing long-term risk in financial services. And so maybe as an industry, we need to apply this to our own workforce when we think about that long-term risk. And the reality is at the exact moment where the industry is becoming more complex, with more focus on tech and data, there's a danger that experience is leaving the industry faster than we're able to attract and develop it. Right, so there's a real challenge there. So anything that gives us the edge in terms of retaining talent, particularly that midlife workforce, is going to make a real difference. That's the first driver, right? It's around growth, talent. The second driver is a connection between our purpose as a business, right? Helping people to achieve a better later life, and our demographics of our customers. So Maurice, you talked about that from a Tesco perspective, kind of reflecting that demographic and that diversity of our customers. So that was a key driver. We already had an established a diversity, equity, inclusion strategy, and we recognised that we needed to dial up our focus on age inclusion as part of that. And then finally, really just recognising the commercial opportunities from having that multi-generational workforce, where if you build that diversity, genuine sense of inclusion and belonging, that fosters creativity and innovation, and that is a real differentiator within the industry. So the drivers behind this, the why, directly link to our purpose, our growth strategy, and our customers and our inclusive culture. So that's the first question, which is about why. Second question is what did we do? Where did we start? The first thing we did was to commit to being an age-inclusive accredited employer, and there's a whole charter of commitments across the employee life cycle that we commit to as part of that. So that was a start point. The next thing we did was to start with the data. So we worked with 55 Redefined on a really in-depth age readiness diagnostic, and this gave us insights and a real launch pad for a whole strategy. So not a single program, but an age inclusion strategy. And what it told us was, for example, the average age of retirement within the business, how we compare against our peers in terms of age diversity, areas in the business where we have less representation from colleagues aged 50 or higher, and then where also we can increase representation, particularly in those areas that are customer facing. So that was a really, really important point to start with the data and the insights. One insight that we had was from our engagement survey and from that diagnostic, we actually found that those colleagues aged 55 to 65 in the business were actually one of our most engaged groups. And I think that probably, I was struck, Lindsay, by your stat about 92% feeling unsupported. I couldn't remember what exact age bracket that was. But actually what we saw within Just was really strong engagement scores in that group, and people feeling a sense of autonomy, enjoying the working environment, clarity, and feeling supported by their manager. So that was really reassuring and said something to us about, well, that will drive performance, and it said something about the roles that the managers were playing in that as well. Neal, you're going to talk about spotlight a couple of programs as part of our strategy. Just to touch on two things, something that came out of the age diagnostic was more insight into how we needed to adapt our EVP to attract more age-diverse workforce, and, for example, imagery on the careers site, particularly in those customer-facing areas. Just one example, one individual we hired who had we'd been in the RAF, been in the civil service for 30 years, had no experience within the industry. We partnered with 55 Redefined in terms of hiring people into the business. He came through that channel, and he was just buzzing about his experience, really felt connected with the purpose of the business, loved the conversations with customers, loved the conversations with and the connections with colleagues as well. So just to sort of, one story of one person who joined there. And then another example of something we found was, Maurice, you mentioned mentoring. We have a reverse mentoring program that we've run a number of cohorts. And actually in the last cohort, we focused on age diversity. So age diverse pairs with colleagues connecting with a senior person in the business to understand what's the lived experience across different generations. That was really, really powerful and gave some great insights. So rather than me listing off lots of initiatives, we thought it'd be better to take a bit of a deep dive into a few of them. So Neal, over to you.
Thanks, Simon. So, I just wanted to talk about a couple of examples. So, one is going to talk about Intergen Connect Network, which is our colleague network, which I want to share a few insights on. Talk a little bit about development and learning for our people managers, Simon mentioned earlier on, and our colleagues. And then finally, a bit like Maurice, I want to share our experience of the Me Redefine platform, very much aligned to our purpose of customers having a better later life for colleagues planning their own better later life. So firstly, on Intergen Connect. So this is one of our 8 networks, very much representative of our culture, being inclusive, drawing across different dimensions in the organisation. And this was very much designed to be a relaxed, informal space where peers and allies could get together and share ideas, thoughts, experiences across generations. One of the key initiatives we've done here is introduce what we call tea and talks. The idea we gather people together, informal, over a cup of tea. I think the first one, actually, we had tea tasting, didn't we? So colleagues here, so if you want to talk about this, we've got Tamsin and Anna in the room as well from Just that you can talk to about that. But we've also had colleagues sharing best practices around IT shortcuts, someone sharing their own journey of moving up to retirement and what did that feel like and what did they do as they got there. And then more recently, some of the published work that we've done on generations for our customer base, our Gen Voices research, we shared that across colleagues, very much thinking about how could we add that into our dimensions of diversity as an organisation internally by thinking about where we were shaped that formed our generations. I love all that stuff about going back to your childhood and thinking about the adverts or the TV programs or the toys that you played with, and that connects you perhaps as a generation, but then thinking about not living on that stereotype and thinking about people as individuals and human beings. And we very much changed the network. The network gave us feedback to say, we started off as perhaps an older workers network, so this older workers network didn't want to be pigeonholed. So we've now rebranded into Gen Connect, and really encourage all colleagues from our newest grads to our most experienced colleagues to get together and share ideas, which is working really well, sharing those insights and perspectives. Secondly, I wanted to talk a little bit about our development that we've run. And we recognised that the role of a people manager was kind of critical in this inclusion agenda, very much looking at from an age lens point of view. So we've invested in powering up the skills of our people managers. And this was about, yes, consciously adding in age into our inclusion and belonging agenda, but very much thinking about the basics of listening, of coaching, of having conversations, and very much thinking about that how do we include everyone in those as we go through our day-to-day habits, and recognising that, for us, I think it's a phrase that we've heard before, is age inclusion happens or doesn't in those day-to-day conversations, and that was very important to us. And we've extended it to new managers, and we've also opened out the Power Up programme for all colleagues. So we now Power Up Your Career for all colleagues, and we've run workshops on intergenerational working, collaboration, and more recently the digital learning as well that we've accessed through 55 Redefined. And then I want to move on to our experience of Me Redefined. So just a little quote there from Ellie, who's our Chief People Officer, very passionate about this, and very much approaching the idea of this digital coaching programme, not just from an individual point of view, but really recognising this was a business decision. This was about us understanding what was going on for our people so we could get those real age insights that could shape the future of work, shape our future policies. So we wanted colleagues, yes, to explore possibilities, to kind of build their confidence and think about what was next. And we advertised to everyone, but we didn't use an age, but we did talk about midlife professionals or people looking at transitions and how it could be helpful for them so they could take control of what came next. And what we really wanted to do was kind of recognise that, this perhaps midlife professional workers perhaps didn't feel they'd been invested in, and we wanted to recognise this was an important life stage for people, so we could normalise that transition, and it wasn't a taboo subject anymore. So very much thinking about from a business perspective as well as from an individual perspective. So we started our first cohort back in October. We took a little bit longer, so we're going up until April. So we haven't got as many people through the programme just yet, but I do want to share some insights in a moment. So as a financial services organisation, we've got lots of people based in London, based in the southeast, very much that white-collar professional accountants, actuaries, as well as some IT and even the odd HR professional in the mix as well. We very much kind of recognised we needed to meet them where they were. This had to be a professional programme for them. So we emphasised the aspects of confidentiality, and it's quite interesting in terms of the things that people share on the site, knowing that will be aggregated and anonymised, that we can use for data, whereas perhaps when you're talking to people individually, they perhaps feel a little bit more reticent or reluctant to kind of share their kind of individual stories. Not me, I'll share mine in a minute. The emphasis was very much on about being self-led. Yes, we had guardrails in place, but it's very much about taking their own time. But I think I'm going to learn some lessons from Tesco. I love the 14-week sprint. That might be something we think about for cohort 2. So perhaps just looking at some of the results then, in terms of what we had, and I'd love to thank Lizzie and Kirsten and the team have been phenomenal in terms of supporting us through here. And I'm hoping as we get to the end of our first cohort, we'll be able to stand back on stage and share those kind of completion stats in a sense. But we have seen really useful insights coming out already from the programme. The group wanted to plan. They wanted more time with family. They wanted to travel. They wanted work to be flexible for them in the future, whatever that looked like. It could be part-time, it could be voluntary, but they wanted some flexibility in here. And they started sharing some of their individual actions and where they're going. I started a Teams chat community and kind of asking people, how things are going. And I had some lovely quotes that I could share with you in terms of people saying it's been inspirational. They've rediscovered their value and purpose as a result of the programme. And people making decisions. I want to develop others. I've got a now list of ambitious dreams I want to go and live. I'm starting to save differently for the future. I want to know more about the benefits we've got, and we ran a workshop just talking specifically about the benefits. So just to kind of finish off this kind of section, we've seen a dramatic increase, a bit like similar to Tesco, a dramatic increase in clarity over the next phase. People are clear about what they want for the future, dramatic increase in confidence that they can execute those plans, and much more connection with work and their role for us, which is fabulous for us to see. And from a data point of view, I think we'll go one slightly ahead of the average. That at the moment we're seeing people reporting an average 5.4 added years to their career, but they are looking for new challenges. They are looking for what can I do over the next 2 years. Bit of a personal story perhaps before we wrap up, Simon. So I've gone through the programme as well as managing it. Since I started the programme, I've changed my hours. I'm now 90%. So I have every other Friday, spending more time with family. I've got both ends of the generations that I'm spending time with on that time, which I'm very lucky to be able to do. And also to boost my employability and my future skills, I'm also taking a qualification. So I'm very grateful to Just. They've sponsored me for an apprenticeship. We talked about apprenticeships earlier on. So not only am I professionalising my L&D, but also thinking about data analytics and AI for the future. So very much looking forward to completing the programme and to getting the further results that can impact how we do things at Just going forward. Perhaps, Simon, I'll hand back to you to wrap up before we take some questions.
Thanks, Neil. Just before I go on to Q&A, I like Maurice's slide with some reflections. We didn't have a reflection slide, but as you were putting them, I thought there's probably 3 reflections. Feel free to add to them, Neil, sort of in the moment. One is about this being, I think to your point, Lindsay, you don't have a growth strategy without an age strategy. It's absolutely an enterprise strategy and challenge rather than an HR one. I think second thing is the data was so important, doing that age diagnostic, and the information we got from that really guided everything from that we did and a joined up strategy. And then I think the final thing is one of the benefits of Me Redefined and the network was getting the conversation happening across the business and really generating excitement and energy around it. So I think that that was a really positive impact. I think, crikey, we've run over time, sorry. Thank you. Thanks.
A completely different environment. So we've gone from grocery retail into financial services. I'd love to ask some questions. So put your hand if you have a question, and someone with a roving mic will come around. Don't be shy. We are shy. No? Oh, one over here. Just Caroline.
Hi, Jess Hardy from AXA UK. I was just wondering, with the people leader training that you did, what was the sort of key takeaway from it that people leaders were struggling with in this space?
Do you want me to pick it up? Yeah, I think for us it was about having great conversations. So they're very good at following the process, but I think it was having comfortable conversations. And I guess one of the first conversations I had with Lindsay, I think, was remembering that can't ask, won't tell kind of conversation. So we're trying to give people managers the opportunity to ask questions about things that are difficult, and that could be well-being. It doesn't have to be age, all those kind of things. So really trying to face into that, which has been useful. We actually used some AI role plays recently, which has really helped people kind of playing with that conversation without damaging another human being.
We've on the questions that people ask, just so you know. So I'm level 47. I don't have children, and I'm increasingly the statistic of midlife women who have chosen to have either 2, 1, or none, versus parents who had 5, 4, or 3. Throughout my 20s and 30s, I was asked systematically, "Are you going to have children?" I went, "No." And then there'd be a slight head tilt and go, "Can you not have children?" "I don't know, haven't tried." And then an even bigger head tilt, which would be, "Do you not like children?" And I think we all now know better. Fast forward 1-2 decades, we know that we wouldn't be putting our female colleagues through that kind of series of questions. Yet every day we get hundreds of people share with us that their colleagues are going, "So when are you going to retire?" They're going, "I don't know, I'm 56 and my child's 3. So 25 years? What are you trying to tell me? Are you trying to give me a subtle signal that I should be easing out?" And so every day we're asking or lumbering into these line manager conversations with good intentions. We think it's a positive, young people think it's a positive conversation to ask, what are you going to do when you're retiring? And the older person's going, "Fuck off." No time soon. I don't look like your dad. I'm not your parent. And so keep asking. So, but we somehow just assume that our midlife leaders, those that are navigating colleagues with, what was the stat, 76? So can you imagine being that store leader that's got 76 years between the colleagues that they're trying to lead, serve, motivate? I mean, how are they even deciding where the Christmas party is? I mean, that's in it. And so we have to start providing better intervention. And what Me Redefined does is give you some of the data and the tools to then intervene.
I think it's really interesting, and I think you have a really good point, because I think people leaders in particular go in with the best intentions because they're worried about that knowledge transfer piece, but then it backfires, and it either backfires and they think, well, I might as well just leave then, and that's your knowledge gone out the door, or the person starts to think, well, do they think I'm too old to do the job? Should I be doing something different? So I think it's really interesting, your feedback on sort of like starting those questions, and we've just reached out to you recently to help us with some people leader training around this, because managers go in with the best intentions, but they don't realise the consequences.
No, they don't, and you can see the millions in payout of that. It's also something to be bearing in mind is that Me Redefined, when we were building it, that's for individuals. But what we've then had to produce is line manager toolkits to then, if I've got somebody in my team who's going through that, they are going to then start asking challenging questions. Can I go down to 90% of my day? And unless the company and you as an individual leader have got a response to these questions, it's very difficult to navigate. So we think about this, why we've spent years testing, working with big companies to then go, right, what are all the questions? What are all the things you have to have in place so that there's support throughout the journey? Any more quick? Yeah, one in the front, if I could just have a mic come through here, Helen, thank you.
Hi, Lisa from 51st Wellness. You've mentioned your age strategy. How have you so far and will continue to evaluate the impact of that age strategy?
Do you want to share? I can. A few different metrics. I think one is the metrics I'm thinking on on Me Redefined, and the impact of that for those people who've been through the programme. Another is our ongoing engagement survey, and looking at we'll always look at the sort of age lens to see what the impact is there. Measuring just the age diversity of the workforce, and particularly in those customer-facing areas, with a focus on ensuring that we reflect that diversity of the customers. So it's there's a range of different metrics. I'm thinking, is there anything I've missed maybe from we've kind of got it against attract, grow and engage, and different metrics across that as in the
Yeah, you also get the annual score. So our accredited customers, so a number of you in the room, AXA, etc., John Lewis, are age inclusive accredited. We've just acquired also, obviously, age-friendly certification. So over the course of the next few months, we're crushing together these to create a global standard in age inclusion. But one of the things you get is an annual score. So you'll get a score out of 100 as to how age inclusive your business is each time. And every year you get that refreshed score, but you can see then 29 indicators around what's moved, what's dragged up the score or what's brought down the score in the previous 12 months. So it's all about that kind of tracking.
Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah, and we don't really have one killer metric. It's really a sort of a combination of different things that we're tracking.
Perfect. So I would like to extend a huge thank you again to Simon and Neil. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
sharing.
Thanks, Lindsay.